Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Movie Retreat. Today we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four, first steps, and how does it compare to other post-Endgame movies. Let's get right into it. So Justin, we went and saw this yesterday. Tell me just your quick initial thoughts, and then we'll start getting into some more spoilery type stuff about the movie.
Yeah, my original thoughts, my overall thoughts of the movie was it was pretty good. I mean, I felt like it was a good superhero movie, and the biggest compliment I can give it is that it did exactly what I think it needed to do for the MCU going forward. I don't really consider this like soft reboot or anything, but I think it was a great opportunity to break away from the overarching MCU storyline where everything started getting very convoluted. As much as I liked Thunderbolts, you still had to pay off that service of like the overarching MCU narrative. This felt like a self-contained early 2000s superhero movie, and I think that's my biggest compliment I can give it. I love the setting, the retro futuristic setting. I thought the performances were great. We'll get into more details later on, and I thought the visuals were really good. And it kind of got in and out. I did think it had some pacing issues. I had some problems with the third act that we'll get into on our spoiler portion. But overall, I was very happy with it. I didn't think it was a great movie, but I didn't think it was a bad movie either. So I kind of left the theater thinking that was good. That was like a good, base hit, you could say. Like it was just a good movie.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the issue that a lot of people run into now is, and we talked about this a little bit on the way home, is after Endgame, everybody thought that every movie has to compare to Endgame and Infinity War, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can compare this to other. I don't even think you can compare it to the movies that came before. That finale. Um, but I'm like you. I probably liked it a little bit more than you. I did have a few like issues with it. I thought this movie could have been a little bit longer, which is weird because normally I like a movie to stay right at 2 hours. If they had another 15, 20 minutes in it, I thought that could have helped it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I liked everything about it. The characters were really well written and performed. A lot of the like side characters, like the robot and other things like that, and Mole Man was really cool. I thought he was a good change of pace. And yeah, I'm kind of like you. I left the theater thinking, yeah, I was happy with that. I don't know if I like it more than I think I like Thunderbolts a little bit more, just because it was so surprising to me how good that movie was. But yeah, I'm like you. Base hits aren't bad.
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you put out a movie, and you don't have to over convolute things with 12 different stories going on at once.
Yeah, and I think that's what played into his advantage is like it got to just tell a singular story. It got to really just focus on the Fantastic Four and the plot for this movie. Aside from the post-credit sequence, which we'll get to in later, we'll get to later in depth. But that's what I liked about it. And that's why I said it reminded me of the early 2000s movies when we were getting like X-Men, we were getting Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Those were just self-contained Spider-Man stories, X-Men stories, and it's just the nature of the beast. Like it's a great thing that we got Endgame and we got Infinity War and we got all that MCU stuff, and it just had to happen this way to where they're almost having to reset everything. But I am a little nervous going forward. If as much as I want to spend more time with these characters, like now they're going to have these characters with other characters. You mentioned Thunderbolts. That movie did a good job bringing all those characters together, but inevitably these characters get less to do the more stuff's going on around them. So I really am glad that we got a true Fantastic Four movie. And as we always talk about, like we've talked about this with James Gunn's Superman, is like, are we going to get a direct sequel to that? Are we going to get a direct sequel to Fantastic Four? I'm not really sure. And so I'm at least glad that we got this movie. I definitely want to spend more time with the characters. And I guess I can get into that right now with the performances. Like for me, obviously Vanessa Kirby was great. I thought she really handled everything as Sue really well. They gave her probably the most to do in the movie. She
Yeah.
had a lot of good speeches. She had a lot of good hero moments. And I just thought she knocked out of the park. But what really surprised me is Pedro Pascal as Reed. For me personally, I wasn't nervous about his performance. I just thought, based on the trailers, it came across kind of flat to me. And the more as I was watching the movie, I really liked this kind of nuanced performance that Pedro Pascal gave to Reed. It felt he had this like social awkwardness about him. You felt like this weight of like a man who just knows too much at times, and it's like a curse. And I really thought he played that anxiety of like having that type of mind really well without overplaying it to where it's like, some
Yeah,
movies
it's like, dude, pull
overplay it.
yourself together.
Yeah, so I really like that. I like the central story. I thought that Johnny and the Thing were well cast as well. I thought they did a really good job. The one character I left wishing would have got more to do, I think, was the Thing.
Yeah.
I feel like he was probably the one who got the least amount of like hero moments. They really set up his character to have this sympathetic arc in the movie, and they really never dove into that. And you were talking about the runtime. I'm guaranteeing that they cut a good 20 to 30 minutes from this movie.
Yeah, that was the one thing that in the original Fantastic Four, I thought that's the one thing I thought they did better is that they kind of showed more of like the struggle of the Thing, like going through normal life and stuff like that. But this movie, it makes a little bit more sense because it is like 4 years. They've had their powers for 4 years when jump into the story. So people are kind of used to them now, whereas before, it was kind of just thrown on them. Um, yeah, I thought everybody knocked it out of the park. I thought they did a really good job. They did a great job casting this movie, all the way up and down. I mean, I thought that, I can't, her name's escaping me, but Silver Surfer,
Oh yeah, Julia Garner.
Julia Gardner. I thought her performance was great too. And there's one thing that initially Galactus in the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie is like a big cloud, and that was a big joke. Is what the hell is this? I actually kind of understand it a little bit more after seeing how well they made Galactus look in this movie, is because they couldn't have made him look that great back then, I don't think. So if you can't do it 100%, like knock it out of the park, then maybe just change it up. I don't know. But they made all the CGI looked fantastic, looked incredible. I think the best parts were the parts with Galactus. I wish they would just spent a little bit more time, like kind of diving into, I would have even liked a little bit like 5 minute back story of his thing or whatever. But again, you don't have to, maybe they didn't want to do that because they didn't want you to sympathize with a guy that's destroying planets or anything, which, I'm cool with.
Yeah, but I think that and we'll give a spoiler alert like Q when we get to that point, but I'm kind of saving Galactus for that because a lot of the issues I had with his character came in the third act. But for me, I really liked the pacing early on. I loved the newspaper clippings, the Time magazine, the late night talk show. I really felt like we are back in that time and place for the most part. I really liked the scene where the Thing is just walking through his old hometown and he's talking to the kids and he's lifting the car. They introduce Natasha Lyonne's character, who's you're thinking is going to be some type of love interest for him. That's where I know that like stuff got left on the cutting room floor. Is like, not only we haven't even gotten to the fact that John Malkovich, who was featured in the trailers, wasn't in this movie. So something happened with his character where they cut his character out. Mole Man, you mentioned as little time. I think his name's Paul Hauser, or I believe his name
Paul
is
Walter Hauser, I think.
He's fantastic in the very limited screen time he has. He's the one part of comedic relief that actually works in this movie. The jokes fall flat hard. Like, like our screening was pretty much full. I mean, we did see it at like 3:00 on a Thursday, but it was a full screening and the jokes did not land whatsoever. So that was one of the big negatives I felt with the movie.
Yeah, and that's another thing that the original I felt did better is the jokes, especially from Johnny Storm, where Chris Evans was a lot better. This movie was a little bit more dramatic than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a little bit more like upbeat and kind of have that not to the extent of like Superman did, but just have more of like these like upbeat moment. And it's really just kind of for a big portion of the movie, it's kind of like a family drama in a way.
The stakes felt really high. I really enjoyed. There is some pacing issues in the middle. They spend a lot of time with Reed and Sue, which I like. I thought their dynamic was really well written. But when you have to introduce 4 new characters, 4 new performances, somebody's going to get left with the least amount to do. And I felt like the Thing was that character that I felt like could have been kind of the heart of the movie, with kind of going that avenue where I mentioned that love interest with Natasha Lyonne's character. I thought there could have been something there. There was a lot of moments like that where there was like a thread that I just never felt got we never went down the path long enough. It,
Mhm.
it felt very choppy, the editing style. And then some of the scenes we spent a really long time with, and it felt like really a breath of fresh air. Cause I really love the scene where they're all together eating dinner and she announces her pregnancy or whatever. I love those scenes in the movie. And it just felt like once we got to the midpoint, the stakes are ramping up, but it just gets very rushed and it gets really choppy towards that part of it. And so I don't know how to really describe it because I'm a big proponent of like I'm kind of sick of the 2.5 hour superhero movie. But this one felt like they needed to have a little bit more, at least for the characters' arcs throughout the movie, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where depending on how many characters you have that you have to spend time on, if it's say it's a Punisher movie or something, yeah, that could be 2 hours because you're really only focusing on Punisher for most of the movie. In this, you got four main characters, and you kind of have to split that time not evenly, but as close as you can to make sure everybody has something to do. So yeah, those movies should run a little bit longer than your average like singular story.
And you have to split time with, okay, this movie obviously this was at the center of it. This was a Sue and Reed movie. You can almost say it was a Sue movie. But Reed, it was about them, bringing Franklin into the world. They kind of gave that was kind of something they were hiding for a little bit, but about a month before release, they kind of let that be known that that was like a big plot point. Um, and I liked that. I liked that whole thing, that whole dynamic of bringing in a baby to the world. They're not knowing how the baby's going to be. They don't know what Franklin's going to become. There's that whole thing. And I just wish there would have been more moments with Johnny and Sue as brother and sister, showing that side of those characters. We only really got the Sue as a mom and as a husband to Reed. We didn't really get to see Sue as a sister to Johnny. We didn't get to really see Johnny and Ben's um we didn't get to see that relationship, that kind of back and forth, even though in the original the ones with Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis, they've kind of played that one liner thing
Yeah, they
too
did it.
much.
Yeah.
I wanted to see a little bit more banter between those two characters. I actually thought that Johnny and Reed had some really great scenes together. That was a really good contrast between, Joseph Quinn's character and Pedro Pascal's. And again, I just love the whole science teacher angle. They even had that thing where he's like kind of being a science teacher on screen, Pedro Pascal. And that's what I went away left with the most, I think, was that performance I really liked. And I just wanted to see more of the different character dynamics between the four. Like even Reed and Ben, they didn't have a lot of moments together. And once the movie shifts into, and we'll get to this in the spoiler part, but once it shifts into what the final act becomes of what they're having to protect and what they're having to like try to accomplish, you don't get an opportunity for any of those stakes to be as high as they could be if you would have established those four character dynamics throughout the movie.
Yeah, I feel like the trailers gave away way too much. Like maybe it's just because they promoted the hell out of this movie. Um, but I mean, they tell you basically everything you need to know. I wish they would have kept the Franklin stuff a little bit more close. You could have said that she's expecting a kid, but in the trailers they tell you that Galactus asked too much. Oh, what did he ask for? Oh, we're gonna tell him what he asked. Like I felt like they could have left some of that stuff because there wasn't very many surprises in the movie because I felt like you'd seen most of it. Leading up to the movie, a lot of people were speculating that the stuff you see in the trailers with Galactus that would happen in like the first half of the movie. And I was kind of like, yeah, that makes sense because why else would they be showing all this? No, like that's at the end of the movie, and I wish that they would have left a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, they're never going to. I mean, it's something that I have a tough time with as well. Superman's the same way. I mean, any of these big budget movies, if you follow it like we do, as much as you try to avoid everything, it's like they are just marketing these movies so hard and they're showing you the best parts to get people in the seats. Sadly, it's just the way it is. And yeah, I mean that is unfortunate, but I thought that there was enough there for me new that I enjoyed. I just felt like there was definitely stuff that was even in the trailer that didn't make the movie. Like you go back and look at the trailer, there's a couple scenes in there you just know they cut, and those are probably those moments I'm referring to with the characters. Again, Mole Man might have had a little bit bigger of a role. His portion seemed so cut down that you just know there was more there. John Malkovich's character they just completely took out. He was featured in the trailer. You saw some moments in the trailer between Ben and Sue that never was in the movie. So that's what I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on. But on the flip side, this movie does take a little bit of time to get going. They really do establish this new Earth, this new world, really makes you want to feel like this is, hey, this is completely separate from everything you've seen. We'll connect it later, but we really want to establish this new Earth, this new storyline right now. And I thought that was a positive, but again, you can't have it all, I don't guess, because I don't want the movie to be overly long. But the stuff that I wanted to spend more time with, I felt like was the stuff that probably got
Well,
cut.
and it's weird because we kind of had the same thought on Superman too. Is like some of the stuff we wanted to see more of was the family stuff, dynamic stuff. It wasn't the action sequences. We want to see more of like the human side of these people. And I'm with you. I'm kind of torn because we always talk about how most of these movies are way too long, and then when we get like a 2-hour movie, we're like, man, that could have been a little bit longer. So we're kind of,
Here's the thing: the movies. There's been times where an hour and 45-minute movie has felt longer than a 3-hour movie.
yeah,
So it really just depends. It's not so much the runtime as like what is the pacing of it. And this one did have some weird pacing issues to where like I felt like when we got like this, and we can go ahead and get into the spoiler part if you're okay with it.
yeah.
So this is our spoiler part of the review that we're getting into now. But the highlight of the movie is when they go speak to Galactus. That's the
Yes,
best
that's the
sequence
best.
in the whole movie. Because there's like a mission. They're taking initiative. Silver Surfer came down and she's basically just, the scene in the trailer where she's saying this planet's been marked. They want to go negotiate with Galactus. That whole sequence was really cool. The way they unveiled Galactus, the scope of that was really cool. I really liked the character interactions because they're having to escape this thing from this basically Galactus, and everybody has something to do. Ben's over here on the pilot controls, Sue's having Franklin in the moment, Reed's having to do this while pinpointing all this different stuff, Johnny's having to do something, and you find out a lot about the characters through that scene, and plus the Silver Surfer sequences that are super cool. She's like riding like lava waves and all this stuff. And that scene was so great that I felt like once we got back to Earth, an issue I always had with the movie is like, I don't think they should have like lied per se, but I thought it was just an interesting choice that they told people like they want our son.
I thought that too. I
They
was
could have
like,
maybe left that out because now you have this thing where like everybody's like hates you, like they want you to get rid of your kid now.
yeah,
And that kind of played that weird dynamic of, Sue's speech later in the movie kind of brought that back together, but you never really felt like they hated. And I kind of had the same issue with Superman, James Gunn's Superman. I hate to compare him, but there was a lot of similarities there with, that one piece of social media thing had everybody turn on Superman, and you had that for like 2 minutes.
yeah,
So it never really felt like this rewarding thing when they finally do come back together. And same with here, like Sue's speech kind of gets everybody on their side again, but you never really felt like they were against the Fantastic Four to begin with, So it was kind of that weird thing. But I did love the whole sequence where they're getting ready for Galactus's incoming, the whole world's basically working together. I really like that aspect of it. But I just think that the movie never got to reach that high again. We had that high pretty early in the movie with that sequence, and I just felt like we never reached that again.
yeah. And it's kind of, I guess it kind of speaks to how great that scene was because I'm like you. I thought that was the best part of the movie. And it's a good, I don't know, probably 20-minute scene, I guess. But I wish they would have. That's what I'm saying. I wish they would have focused on Galactus just a little bit more because I just felt like he's a character that they've tried to do a couple times in different movies, but you never really get to know, like, and maybe his only motivation is, it's very singular. It doesn't have to be explained or whatever. But I did think that, especially the first time you see him, is very like menacing. Is very. They did a good job of like presenting the scale. How much bigger he is than everything else, and but yeah, the third act for me was a lot weaker than I was hoping it would be because it just kind of seemed like I don't know really how to word it, but it just seemed very convenient. You know what I mean? Like that Galactus is he's gonna decide to just come down there. He's not gonna be like, no, you can bring this dude to me. Like you can bring this little kid to me. So those are some of the things that again, when you really start like dissecting things, you kind of see issues here and there. But I'm just like you. I really enjoyed my time with the movie. I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on certain things. Um,
Yeah, but the Galactus. Let's stick on Galactus for a second because I had a huge issue with this.
okay.
Like the Galactus problem is the whole movie they're talking about when they finally figure out who Galactus is. It's terrifying. It's like this dude is the size of like a planet. Like this dude is just a massive entity, you know. And the way that Silver Surfer builds him up the whole movie, like it just makes him feel like this no emotion, just it's just what it is. It's a hunger that can never be satisfied. This is just how it goes. And the whole movie, the whole build up, the build up is almost like, really well done. I thought they did a really good job, like showing them put this stuff in place, calling these different countries, working together, showing that side of Sue that I really liked about her, like, getting in like politics basically and being able to like do all that while Reed's trying to, come up with all these algorithms. And so you're really hyped and you're really like stressed. You're like, okay, this is gonna be pretty scary. Like Galactus is coming to the Earth. And then when he gets there, like nothing happens. Like he's just they put all the townspeople into the underground thing with Mole Man, which was smart. That's a really smart thing to do. But in doing that, it takes away the civilian aspect of what makes a lot of these movies great is like having to protect civilians from an incoming attack. I thought it would have played a lot better if they wouldn't have known that he was coming and he
Yeah.
just shows up.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a part of it, that if he would have just shown up and he would have been going after the Franklin and they were having to figure out how to do that and protect all these people, that would have been a lot more interesting, seeing Johnny having to save people from a tall building, seeing Ben having to get people corralled and something else, seeing them use their powers to protect people. Because a lot of times, man, their power, it was basically just like they were trying to do like a bait and switch with Franklin. And he's just Galactus just becomes very non-scary very quickly. And especially when Sue comes out and is basically able to single-handle, which I thought was a strong scene. I liked the fact that she was very powerful and like had to throw everything at him. But when one person of the team, the Fantastic Four, is single-handedly dominating Galactus, you don't have any fear of him whatsoever. There was no point in the movie where Galactus does anything that's even remotely terrifying. You just
Other than eating that one planet.
Yeah, but you really don't see Galactus do that. You see his ship or something do that, and it's just there's never any like suspense when he's on screen. Like you would think when he shows up, there'd be like, oh my god, dude, this is pretty scary. But by the time he shows up, it's the third act. You pretty much know nothing's going to happen to our main four characters. There's nobody else around because everybody's in the bunker. So the stakes are low. There's nobody. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's what really bothered me is how quickly she dispatched Galactus. And it took this like threat that they're so worried about all movie. And then Sue's just able to basically single handedly like.
Yeah, that was a bit weird to me, the decision to have him. I don't have an issue with like how he ended up getting defeated, because again, like you're probably not going to be able to beat this, god like entity type thing. But again, I did find it weird that she was able to just muster up this power that could, because now going forward, they're gonna have to explain how if they have some other threat come along, if she doesn't just tackle this thing easily, then they're like, well, what the hell? A movie ago, she was throwing Galactus around.
Yeah, and that was my big issue with the Galactus character at large. I think his name's Ralph Innes or something. And he was great. His voice is great. We see him a lot and we've seen him in other projects with Robert Eggers. He just always plays that type of role great. He's got one of the best voices. And I was just so disappointed with him in the third act. I just couldn't that's like one thing I could not get over, and it kind of ruined that character for me, was with just how quickly he was dispatched. I mean, he went from being like one of the cooler MCU villains to, in my opinion, one of the absolute weakest. Like there was just nothing about him that like by the end of it, you're like, oh, like all that for that? Like he didn't really do nothing.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those
He
things
smelled
where
some trees.
I think it's one of those things where you never felt even at the so big spoiler here is that once Sue uses all of her powers, she basically dies or is very close to it, and Franklin just through like touching her is able to bring her back. Um, but you never really thought for a moment that she was gonna die, and that's kind of going back to your point of like if you don't have any civilians that people are having to protect or whatever, then there's no real stakes. You know that they're not going to kill one of these four people that they just started a new franchise with. Um, so yeah, I wish they would have handled that third act a little bit better. I just felt that I don't know. I almost wish that they would have flipped the scene, like the ending scene would have been they would have found a way to beat him in space or something. You know what I mean? Like I wish that the sequence we got at the beginning of the movie or towards the beginning would have been at the end.
Yeah.
And then
Well, and again, I think that, another scene that just irritated the hell out of me was when Johnny is going to have his hero moment, and out of nowhere, I keep calling Silver Surfer because I forget her actual name. But it's basically the Star Wars Last Jedi all over again. When Finn's actually going to get to have this great character moment, and Rose like knocks his ship out of the way, same deal. She just knocks him out of the way, and I just hate this thing. I will say the thing the movie did was they made every moment feel like they took it seriously. They didn't like try to do like a cheap joke to take a stressful moment or suspenseful moment out, except for this part where he's going to do a hero moment. He's like, tell Franklin Uncle Johnny loves him. And even though I agree that if he would have done it, he's probably, died. They can't kill off Johnny, but there was a way to have him have his moment. Even Ben, aside from breaking down some pillars on a building, he didn't get to do much. And that's what bothered me is like Sue got this great hero moment, which I really loved. But to get that moment, you made everybody else around her seem very weak. And you made
yeah,
even Galactus.
yeah, and I felt like they could have something that just popped in my head. I wish they would have just had both of them like go like fly into him at the same time. So basically they both, she knocks him out of the way. She like hits the killing blow on Galactus and knocks him through this like wormhole or whatever. And they both could have hit him, and then she gets sucked in. Johnny's trying to like save her, and he can't save her or something like
Yeah.
that. To me, that would have been a
I
better.
didn't want them to do what the original, the one with Chris Evans and all that did, where they showed all four of them had to have each power used to take down Doctor Doom. Because in the first one, it's like,
Yeah,
or the second one, I can't remember which one, but
first one.
they had to use all their powers together. I'm glad they didn't go that route. And I was overall pretty happy with how Reed was portrayed with his powers, but I just felt like there could have been more there. And I think getting the civilians out of the city, while smart from like a real life perspective, that was a great move. Having no civilians there to be harmed made that scene feel empty.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else. It was just like this huge New York playground with just Galactus and just these four characters. And there wasn't like a building crashes. Nobody cared. Like nobody's in it. Like, there's nobody, walking their dog that like all of a sudden Galactus shows up and they got to figure out what to do. So again, even though I liked the build up to Galactus, I think it ended up hurting it in the third act because there was almost too much planning for him to arrive. It's almost like the villain telling you his master plan instead of just doing it. It's
Yeah.
like, you said earlier, why didn't Galactus just show up unannounced? Like,
Yeah. Something else that I've noticed, and this isn't just for this movie, but this just shows like when you're getting older, things that you like think about that you didn't think about when you were a kid is now every time I see a movie, I think the first movie that really like pointed it out to me was Man of Steel. Is just when you see all these buildings getting knocked out, I'm just like, God, dude, that's gonna take forever.
it's gonna take forever.
It's gonna cost a fortune to rebuild this city.
Yeah. But yeah.
But yeah, I just overall I think we're both on the same page that we liked it. It wasn't anything that is gonna be like I'm not gonna have it in like my top 10 of all time or anything.
No, but I think that the reason I'm kind of getting on it for this third act issue is because I felt like it was really strong up until like the third act really kind of was a make or break with how the movie ended up being for me. And even though I really loved the scene where Pedro Pascal, Reed is holding Sue in his arms, that was really good acting. I thought I liked again having some weight to what was going on. but I felt like that whole sequence felt really rushed. I felt like it wasn't really planned out too well. Like, Reed's master plan was to get him to cross over this line. And I just thought there could have been more ways to show how smart Reed is by his actions than just by telling us how smart he is. Like, again, we all know Reed, if you follow the comics, how intelligent he's, like the most intelligent man in Marvel. But I wish he would have came up with something that, like, kind of like shocked you as an audience member, like almost like a sleight of hand of like, oh my gosh, dude, he was planning this all along. It wasn't as simple as just getting him here. Reed was thinking on a different plane. So again, I'm sticking on that because I felt like if they could have stuck that landing with the third act, I thought this would have been even stronger of a movie. But that was my big issue with that third act and with Galactus and Silver Surfer, is that they just didn't do it. Like the third act just really felt like it didn't have as much weight to it as I wanted. But leading up to that, I actually liked the smaller moments throughout, the smaller moments of when you really got to see the character spending. I'm really glad they let Johnny do something besides like just make one-liners. I really liked how he got to kind of crack that code. But even then, it's like he does something really cool, and then she just flies off, and then she just shows up really quick to do that.
Well,
to
yeah,
basically
but I mean,
steal
if
the
he
hero.
doesn't do that, then she doesn't come back.
But I'm saying that's what felt empty for me, is like there could have been more of like, it's just like she hears it, she goes off, they show that little bit of a flashback, but they never have these moments to where that's happening within the action. And I think that's what made that scene so strong early on in the movie, is you're seeing a lot about the characters through the action. Like you're seeing like, they're having to deal with 4 different things at once. And that's the teamwork I was looking for. In the final act, there wasn't a whole lot of teamwork at all. There was just like, I'm going to handle it myself. And then you 3 guys just need to kind of get up there and like get the baby or whatever, which is an important job. But it never felt like Galactus was a huge threat once he actually stepped foot on their planet.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big mistake, because now, whether he's dead or not, you've kind of made him. It's kind of the Kang issue, with Kang. It's like, even though that was a clone in Quantum Mania, you made Kang look like not that strong of a villain. So like now this Galactus villain that you built up all movie comes across very weak to me. And I think that was one of the big issues with the final act. How much of a success do you think this movie will be with like not only the general audience, but how do you think people are going to look on this movie? Do you think it's going to take like Doomsday coming out to kind of see how good this movie, like, is this movie look back on like, okay, that's what started this new phase? Or do you think this was just kind of, they played it almost a little too safe with this one?
No, I think safe was the right play. I don't think they could have another, I don't want to say disappointment. Well, yeah, I guess disappointment is the right word. I don't think they could have another disappointing movie, especially a big friend. If Black Widow doesn't perform well, okay. Or if, Shang-Chi doesn't do as great as people thought it would, that's fine, because these characters aren't like pillars of Marvel. Fantastic Four is a pillar of the property. So they needed this movie to do well, and I think it will do well at the box office, just like Superman's doing. And I think it was a good first step.
But that's what I'm saying. How important do you think this movie? Do you think this was kind of like, okay, let's get this movie established? Do you see all 4 of these characters being huge players in the next, in Doomsday, in the next movies? Because that's what I wanted to get to real quick before we moved on, was that post-credit sequence. So post-credit sequence, we see, Sue and Franklin kind of sitting there. She goes to check.
Okay.
So with the post-credit sequence, we see Sue, and Franklin sitting there. She goes to check on something. She comes back, and we see our first sighting of what we can only assume is Dr. Doom holding the mask very conveniently near Franklin. So that's, our lead into Doomsday, obviously. Do you think what do you think overall about that post-credit sequence?
I thought it was strong. I didn't think it was one of the best, because to me, I thought it would have been better if he had the mask on and he like turned to Sue and it showed him like in the mask. I thought that would have been like almost kind of scary a little bit. So again, I thought it was fine. The second post-credit sequence was the biggest waste of time. Like if you're trying to decide if you should leave after the first one, I would. Like, the second one is literally just
fun. I mean, I liked it, but I don't know if it's worth waiting the whole time.
That's what I'm saying. You got to wait another like 5-6 minutes to get to that. So I don't. But again, I thought it was good to. I think they are going to have to start introducing Doom here and there. I do think the tricky thing that they're going to have to do for general audiences is explain the whole Robert Downey Jr. being Doom thing. Like, I think that's a very tricky
I think
corner
they
that
got
they've.
some. Yeah,
I just think that's a tricky corner that they've painted themselves into, and how they handle that is going to make or break Doomsday. I think.
yeah. I think they have something up their sleeve. I can only hope. Um, the post credit sequence just felt so like, I don't know. It just felt so kind of cheap to me. It just felt like this, like, there could have been a much more interesting way. I'm telling you, the Thunderbolts post credit sequence was fantastic. Like, I thought that was like a true post credit sequence to where it alludes to what you're going to be getting. It kind of gives you more character moments. This one just felt like it didn't even feel like a true. I don't know. It was kind of what you would expect. Like, once I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's something that somebody could just tell you. Like, oh yeah, you see Doctor Doom's helmet. You see Doctor Doom there with Franklin. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I just felt like there could have been more to it. I do think that the less they show of Doctor Doom altogether, even though the movie is called Doomsday, I think not even they're never going to do this, but not showing him at all would be the play. I know they're not going to do it, but showing him is instantly going to get that anticipation gone.
Not showing him in Doomsday or
No,
before the
in the
movie?
marketing heading into the
Oh,
movie.
okay.
So I'm
Yeah,
saying I liked the smoke and mirrors. I liked the mask. I liked the iconic thing. I don't mind hearing the voice, but I think the less they could show of him as the character, the better off we're all going to be as fans of the movie, because I think that's what made Thanos so awesome when we finally got to him. Not only did he have all this build up, but you saw little clips of him. But when he finally got on screen, he was instantly a force.
see, I kind of disagree, because if they would have had any other actor cast as Doctor Doom, I would have agreed with you 100%. But I'm telling you, they are gonna have to come up with a good reason or a good explanation for general people why this is the case.
Yeah, they
Why?
will. They probably will. But I'm saying I think that is a nugget that can get people into the theater of like, dude, wait a minute. Like, I'm talking just your general movie fan who's not paying attention to any of the news, who just goes to see the big event films, and they're seeing like, wait, how's this going to play in? Like, I thought that was Iron Man. Like, now this is Doctor Doom. Like, what's going on here? I just meant, like, of course they're going to show Robert. I mean, he's one of the biggest movie stars in the world. They're going to show him in the marketing. But I liked the one aspect I did like about the post credit sequence, even though I did feel like it was kind of like a cheap, like, oh, okay, it's Doom is here. He's obviously wants Franklin, super powerful. Franklin, people aren't prepared for how powerful this kid's going to be. If you don't keep up with the comics, it's like kid's like insanely powerful. But I just think that if they show too much of Robert Downey Jr. in the marketing, that it's going to take that elusiveness out of it. And I think that our speculation of like, dude, how good is this going to be? Like, how cool is this performance going to be? Is he going to be able to pull it off? If that gets answered for us in the marketing and in the trailers, it's going to be bad for the movie. I really think that they need to really, there's so many things they can allude to with him being in it without overly showing, kind of like they did with Galactus. I actually thought they handled the marketing of Galactus really well. I just think that by the time he got there in the third act, it kind of was a letdown. But in terms of how they marketed that character, they really did a good job hiding him for the most part. I think they should do something similar with Doom.
See, I don't know. I think I disagree on that too, because I feel like they showed most of the. They probably show 80% of the Galactus stuff in the trailers.
They didn't show his face a lot in the trailers.
But I'm just saying, you see 80% of what he's doing.
That's what I'm saying. It was a disappointment by the time you got to the movie. But I'm just saying, I think that showing Doom with the mask, smart move. Showing Doom without the mask a lot, maybe showing that it's Robert Downey Jr. cool in the marketing. But I'm telling you, if they show too much of that performance, man, it's going to take a lot away from how exciting that could be leading it. That's one of the big questions for that movie is like, dude, Robert Downey Jr.
I think it's the biggest obstacle they're going to have to overcome.
Yeah.
That, and how are they going to fit in twice the roster that they had for these other Avenger movies? How are they going to fit everybody? Because I mean, now you've got probably double the amount of characters you have to add and you have to give screen time to. So
and speculation says that Reed is going to be one of the leads, and so is Chris Hemsworth's Thor and Doomsday. How are you? I mean, of course, we got to assume that Sue. We say Reed, but Sue's got to be in there too. You would assume. I mean, she played such a massive role in this, and the only thing I could think is maybe they're saving Reed to have his big hero moments in this one. Again, I'm kind of talking to people that don't know the story of Secret Wars. If you don't know anything about Secret Wars, having those two as the lead to me makes perfect sense. I'm kind of excited that Thor's going to play a huge role and is kind of like the elder Avenger, and I'm actually excited to see how Reed interacts with these OG characters. That's exciting for me because I walked away from it really loving Pedro Pascal's performance in this, which I didn't really think I was going to, but I really was impressed with his character, and I want to see more of him interact with these other characters in the MCU.
Yeah, so I mean, everything's gonna, this is like the first building block towards Doomsday, and I think they did a great job of kind of like setting the pace and kind of like resetting, not as much as like Superman had to do, but resetting kind of, that and Thunderbolts I think have done a great job of kind of like getting it back on track.
It did feel like Thunderbolts closed that aspect of that phase, and because it was, and Fantastic Four did feel like a new beginning. Like there was enough freshness here to where I feel like this was a sigh of relief of like, okay, they at least made a pretty good movie here.
Yeah,
let's see how that carries over.
Yeah, and I mean that's the biggest thing is you have to have Thunderbolts was strong. This had to be strong as well. I believe it was. I think most people will go away thinking, having that same opinion that it at least is a good movie, not how well you think or how well of a job they did. That's up to you. But I think most people will walk away thinking that it was at least a good movie.
Yeah,